Good evening, everyone. Good evening, good evening, good evening. I am Alderwoman Chantia Lewis, and I am so honored to be with you all tonight. We have an amazing conversation that we are going to embark on, but we also have such an amazing group of panelists here with us tonight. I am excited. So I am going to just do a quick little introduction, and then I'm going to tag team it to my co-moderator, who you all should know. If you don't know, we're gonna introduce her because she is amazing in her own right. But again, my name is Chantia Lewis. I am the Alderwoman of the New Ninth, and I am just excited about tonight. I was having a conversation with one of our panelists, and I said, it's just different being Black in the professional space. It's just different. We're going through multiple things. It's just different. It's time for a recalibration. So tonight, that's what we are going to do. We are going to have a moment in time for ourselves where we're taking out to mentally recalibrate. We deal with so much. Just being whoever we are in our own spaces, that we have to take the time for self-care. And that's not just mani pedis and massages. That is mental, emotional, and physical self-care. So for the next hour and a half, we will be locked in helping you and me get some mental recalibration. So with that, I will say welcome one more time. You will see our amazing guests. We're going to make sure that we take a pause for the cause and let everyone introduce themselves, because this is a dope panelist. This is a dope panel, y'all. I'm just telling you. Now, right at the top left of your screen, you'll see a hotline number and some contact information. Screenshot it, share it, write it down, whatever you have to do. But if you, at the end of this, if you feel like you need just a little bit more, we got something for you. But this number, this email, this website will be a help for you right now. So I am a moderator, but I'm not the expert. So I'm going to turn it over to the experts so we can have this conversation. Simone?
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Alderwoman Lewis. I appreciate the invite and the opportunity to share with everyone that is tuned in with us today. Our panelists are what I like to say, delicious. Deliciousness all wrapped up. We are very excited to have all of you here with us, and we are excited to have this conversation that needs to continue on, because I don't want us to keep hanging up and taking out and hanging up and taking out mental well-being for Black folks and Black individuals and Black professionals. If you are Black and you have a job, you are, in my opinion, a Black professional, and you understand some of the major root causes to some of the things that are ailing us. And so because of your own personal experiences and some of the things we hear on a continuum, we wanted to have this discussion. Briefly, my name is Simone Kilgore. I am the program manager for RECAST, a program out of the Office of Violence Prevention, where we provide support and resources and therapeutic modalities and healing modalities for folks in the Milwaukee community that have experienced stress and trauma. So I'm very excited to be in this position, to be helping people to aid folks with information and resources and modalities in terms of healing, because God knows that we have been dealing with quite a bit during this pandemic, and we want to make sure that we are living our best lives, that we are focusing on mental well-being and mental health and mental healing. And so I'm very, very excited about tonight's program. Moving ahead, we would like to introduce our panelists. We have also a panelist on that you all might not be able to see, but she is very important to what we are doing this evening. And we want to give Marika Rogers an opportunity to introduce herself briefly tonight and say a few words about why this panel and this discussion is important to her. Marika?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much, Simone, and thank you so much to Alderwoman Lewis for this opportunity. I am honored and privileged to be a part of this awesome panelist and awesome discussion. I am a licensed professional counselor here in the city of Milwaukee. I have my own private practice, Rogers Counseling and Consulting Firm, where I work with men, women, and youth throughout the city. In addition to that, I also do contract work with local agencies. And I believe that this conversation is important because it allows for Black professionals to have a safe space to discuss things that we deal with on a day-to-day basis that may not be able to discuss on a consistent basis when they're in the workspace. So again, I'm honored and privileged to be a part, and I'm excited to see what we all come up with tonight.
Thank you, Marika. Dr. Kwaku, Dr. Ramel Smith, would you like to introduce yourself next, sir?
Yes, it's a pleasure. I again echo Marika as far as thank you for the invite. I'm a licensed psychologist. I've been born and raised in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Grew up on 7th and Mavina. Anybody know that? You know, that's 53206. But I always tell people, because I want to always make sure that the narrative is correct. When I grew up on 53206, it was a loving, beautiful environment. I mean, you had to keep it real. Don't get me wrong. You couldn't be soft, but it was love. It was beauty. It was compassion. But seeing my city go through this metamorphosis in turn, you start to understand not only was there a financial decline, but you saw the mental decline that came with so many different things. So I've been able to do some things, obviously, in this area to try to help. But I think what we need to do is to kind of revisit what we want to do, because some of the things we were doing has been helpful, but we have to ask, is that helpful enough? And so what I wanted to do tonight is to be able to come together with like-minded professionals, talk with a beautiful community to see what can we do to revisit this, to make it where we remove the stigma, but definitely make it so it's impactful for what we do. So that's what I'm hoping for that conversation tonight.
Thank you. Thank you. I call him Doc, but you know, thank you for being a part of this. And then we have our wonderful out of town panelists. Thank you for being here, Brother Brandon Johnson. We're so excited for you to be joining us from Baltimore.
From Baltimore.
Baltimore. I'm gonna get it right.
Also, so excited to be here, like my other panelists. Definitely thank you for the invitation. I'm Brandon Johnson. I have worked in the suicide prevention space, and particularly for about the past 9 years. I've worked local, state, and federally currently on this topic, and work particularly around Black youth suicide, and working with our community around that topic and other mental health topics as well. I'm the host of a YouTube channel called the Black Mental Wellness Lounge, where we talk about issues that impact Black people specifically with their mental health. And so definitely invite you all to check that out. But for me, this conversation is one that I feel like could potentially be really powerful, because we all operate in some spaces that aren't always safe in the workplace, aren't always helpful. And so just to have that dialogue tonight, and hopefully to empower someone else and even each other, I think is just awesome. So I'm just excited to be a part of this.
Thank you, Brandon. And for briefly before we move forward, can you mention again your podcast and our website so that could be added to our chat, and so folks can get that information, please?
Sure. If you just go to YouTube and type in the Black Mental Wellness Lounge, our page will come up. And yeah, we've been around. I call it my pandemic baby. So it's been about a year and a half that I've been working on that. We got about 40 videos at this point up, and we have therapists, psychiatrists, psychologists, and then we just got regular community folk just, to talk about this thing, because everybody's perspective is important. And so, yeah, so if you just go to YouTube and type that in, it'll come right up.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Thank you all for joining us again. You have been introduced to our dynamic panelists today. Tonight's discussion, of course, will be around Black mental well-being, but mostly mental recalibration. How do you recalibrate? How do we have these discussions about recalibrating during the pandemic, or after the pandemic, or post-pandemic, or wherever you all feel you are? I don't really know where I'm at in the pandemic anymore. I'm kind of somewhere towards the end of it for me personally, but we still are in the middle of this thing, you all, and trying to fight back to find some form of normalcy, but we know that there's a new normal. We also want to discuss some of the ills that harm us as Black professionals, Black folks, period, that have to deal with things that other communities may not have to deal with. And so I think this is a very important discussion, but mostly that we have these panelists on that will address some of the questions. So I wanted to say, please make sure that you all, if you have any questions or things that you might like us to discuss briefly, that you do add those questions to our chat box and we will get to them. Also, if not, we will address them at a later time and a later date. And I want to mention that if you are logged on and one of our participant listeners or viewers, that there's a handout that is added in tonight's presentation. There are more resources on that handout. So make sure you tap into that handout, you download it, you save it, you keep it close to you, and that you share it. It's important to share it with other people that you know and work with or love, and you feel like they may need some mental health support. Please share those resources again. Alderwoman?
Thank you so much, Simone. So tonight we are going to have this conversation, right? We're going to flow. I want to make sure that one, we are answering questions, but two, that we are allowing the experts who we took the time to hand select to be in this space to offer up some nuggets, because so often I know for me, I'll speak for me and how we got here, right? So for me, it was just dealing with being young, dealing with being a woman, and dealing with being Black in this space. So I am the first woman and the first Black person to represent my area as I'm sitting on the city council here in Milwaukee. And in that space, I had to deal with a lot of people that said, you're young, this is how we do things, you'll deal with it. Totally dismissing my perspective, my voice, and the fact that I was elected to this position to represent the people. And so as I was sitting back and really just trying to figure out how to hone in my voice, my power, and still be professional and not be viewed as the angry Black woman. I tried to do it nicely. I tried to do it, with a little bit of authority. I tried to do it with a little bit of aggression, with a little bit of passion, mix it all together, and I still was called the angry Black woman. And so I found it very interesting that no matter how I delivered, I was still the angry Black woman. And one of the things that I really I grabbed hold of was Minda Hart's book, The Memo. It was really, really, really good, talking about Black faces in the space. So I want to throw the question out to you all. How would you advise someone, before we delve into the real work? I know Simone is looking at me like, wait a minute. But I just wanted to throw that in there, and then we're going to throw it to Doc to take us all the way back. But just to give us a precursor, how would you give someone a nugget, an advice, a word of wisdom to help them navigate that space and finding their voice and just saying, it's okay, pushing back a little bit, doing it in a professional way? And I don't know if we're embracing the angry Black woman because it's passion. It's not being angry, I'm passionate. Or should we be doing something else? I'll throw that out there to anyone who wants to chime in.
I'll say something, and I want to take us all back to a date where probably none of us was born, and that's April 3rd, 1968. There was a man by the name of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He stood on the podium and he told everybody, he said, I'm tired. And you look at Martin Luther King, especially the way that he's looked at in the annals. But here he was, a 39-year-old man, should be, in the prime of his life. He was a doctor at that time. He could have had so many financial advantages, but he gave his life for the people. Now, this was the day before his death. He couldn't know that. But what he was saying, he said, I'm tired. And I think what we have to do is we have to listen to the good doctor and say, first of all, I got to be able to admit that, sometimes the work that's on my shoulder, it's a lot. And guess what? It's okay for me to admit this. I know you think I'm strong, and I know you think I should be able to handle it, but guess what? Even for a strong person, this is too much. And I think what comes with that is, even in your comments, Sister Alderwoman, the angry Black woman, we are defined by other people. We let their words have a place in our mind that they shouldn't. And I think what Dr. King really was starting to recognize at the end as he began to explore his voice even more, they go from the dreamer king to the radical king. And I think in that radicalness was a freedom, and it's a freedom of expression.
Yeah.
And once you have this level
Yeah.
of ability to be free, it's a burden that's lifted. You know why? Because now I can be vulnerable, and I can be vulnerable without caring about what other people might have think. Because before I might have cared what you thought, and that put extra pressure. And so now what we're talking about today is this. It's time for us to be real. It's time for us to be honest, and it's time for us to redefine ourselves. You know, we talk about Kwanzaa, you know, between December 26th and January 1st, but we know that it's all year round. And that second principle of Kujichagulia is talking about self-determination. How do we rename ourselves, redefine ourselves in everything we do? So as we are Black faces and white spaces, we say, how do we say, you know what, I don't have to assimilate to everything. You know, like you said, they're trying to tell you how to fit in. No, I don't want to go through that theoretical reproduction, that social reproduction that keeps the status quo. I am going to be that envelope pusher. I'm going to be what Dick Gregory called that agitator, because if we don't agitate like the washing machine, we don't clean, it just get wet and it stay dirty. So what we say, we're going to be in this mix, we're going to do it. So, you know, going back to your point, what we want to say is like, if we can look at people who we admire and see them get to a point where you say, I understand this, well, I'm going to say that. But in that freedom comes a breath.
Yeah.
And when you breathe after being holding your breath for so long, it feels so good. And that's the start of the healing. So what we want to talk about today is being real with ourselves, being vulnerable, but understanding through that honesty and vulnerability comes healing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Doc. And that's why we're here today, to release that breath, to give Black professionals the opportunity to say, I don't have to hold my breath anymore. I don't have to be defined by other people's view of me. I get to identify and define this for myself. And that's what's important. Because when we show up as ourselves, we do our best work, right, Brother Brandon?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think, you know, one thing that I try to, you know, tell people as we're navigating these spaces is that we're there for a reason. Like, we've been purposed to be in those positions and in those spaces. And, you know, there's so much of it that feels uncomfortable, but once we do what Doc says and really start to, you know, allow ourselves to be ourselves, you know, things start to get a little more comfortable, and we can realize why we were there. Like, what's the reason for us to be here? Like, is it this comment that I need to make in this room because nobody else is thinking of us when this decision is coming down? When, you know, no one is really understanding, you know, why we're moving in a certain way or what things need to be important. A lot of times it is our voice, and it may be our soul voice, you know, in that room. And so we understand where we're connected to in terms of what we're supposed to do when we're there. It's important, and you may not know it as soon as you walk in the door. But if you do what Doc says and start, you know, finding your voice and putting stuff out there, you'll figure out like, man, that was, you know, we've all been in the room where something was about to come down as a policy, a procedure, an action, or something where we've gone, whoa, y'all really about to do this? Is this really where we're about to go?
Right.
And it's your voice. You may be the one person to just be in the hand in the back saying, hey, this is problematic. We can't do this. This can't move this way. And it takes us finding the ability to do that. It's not easy. It's not an easy thing to do. It doesn't always, you know, feel the best. But when you start to learn what your impact can be if you allow yourself to be comfortable in the spaces that may feel uncomfortable, I think you start to get this natural, like, you know, feeling of like, I have to do this now. Like, I have to do this because if I don't know what the other side looks like. I don't know what this decision might mean for my people, even if it's just internal. It doesn't have to be some wide thing like that. But if I don't speak up now, then the person who's in my position after me, or the person who's down the hall in this position that looks like me, may be impacted. So, you know, finding those spaces, and then, you know, that's when you can rest in the piece of it, like Doc said, is when you're able to understand where your purpose.
That's so good.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Can I touch on it really quick,
Absolutely.
please? Can
And I
I
was
just want
going to throw it to you, Miss Marika, for
okay.
sure. I want to hear your voice too, sister.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. I've definitely been in situations in various different organizations that I've worked at where I've had to be that individual that stood up and spoke up about something that needed to change. And one of the things I always do is I have gone to like the core values of the agency. And then I connected it in with my position, because I know Alderwoman Lewis, you spoke to how can we address certain things, but from a professional standpoint. An agency or organization cannot argue their core values. They cannot argue their mission and their vision. So as long as what you're trying to do aligns with those things, you can definitely push whatever concern that you may have.
I love it. It's like throw the ball back, put it in their shoes, put it in their laps, so that
Be
they
true to
have
what
to
you
address
say.
the needs and the concerns of Black folks doing this work. Because if we all, and I'm going to have Doc take us back, I'm going to have him take us back. I hope that wraps some of that up for you, the Alderwoman Lewis, because we want Doc to take us all the way back to the importance of Black folks in this country doing the work that we have always done. If we're laborers, or if we're professionals in terms of educational professionals, if we receive these degrees or positions within government like you, Alderwoman Lewis, whatever we are doing, we have put in some major work in this country, and we deserve and should demand respect, and for our voices to be heard, and for our concerns to be heard, addressed, and for things to be altered so that it's a work environment that is healthy for us too. So Doc, can you take us back a little bit and give us some insight and some history on the work of Black folks in this country?
Yeah, so I want to do that by like starting with today. So, you know, you had said something. You was like, I'm through with COVID. You know, ain't we all so tired of COVID? That don't mean it's gone, but it's like we want it to be gone, but it's still here.
Yeah.
But think about the children that returned to school after 1 year off. You know, for those who didn't get to do anything, it was such a difficult process for the parents, for the teachers, and for the students, just kind of getting adjusted. And they said, now, you know what we need to do? We need to do some type of therapy to get people adjusted to post-COVID era, because COVID was horrific. And I said, boy, if COVID was horrific, what do you think slavery was like? And so now when we think about this, everything that we've talked about is issues that we've dealt with at the job, in the home, in the community, that's hurt us, that's had an impact. But what we have to recognize is not only do we carry that trauma that we're living with on a daily basis that we've occurred during our life, there's a history that lives in our DNA. If you look on different memes within social media, sometimes you might have ran something called ancestral math. And it says, you know, you have 2 parents, of course. You got 4 grandparents. Yeah, you got 8 great-grandparents. And if you go back just down to 9 great-grandparents, that's 2,048 people. And so you think about everything that's happened in those individuals that now carry on in you. For a person to be characterizing within the field of psychology as trauma, to be traumatized, to have PTSD, it's a few things that have to happen. You have to be in an event that's like life-threatening, that's terrifying, or it could have had to happen to somebody who you love. So it could be vicarious because it was your son or your daughter who was in that building or something like that. But after being in this experience, then there's this avoidance. I don't want to go to this place anymore. I don't want anything that triggers this. I want to just stay away from it. But then also it's like, even though I want to avoid it, there's some mind memories that come. I'm haunted during the day by these intrusions. I'm haunted at night when I sleep, where I don't even want to sleep. Now, this is what we have to give to be able to diagnose someone with PTSD. So now think about the things that you don't even know that happened. That's been labeled as a hazy trauma. Like, I can't even think about the event that happened that's causing trauma. So if we understand that the pain that a mom goes through is then carried to the baby, we understand a woman, please don't smoke, don't drink while you're pregnant. That's going to affect the baby, especially when it happens. So what happens when that mother goes through that pain? And we understand that when a mother is pregnant, she's really pregnant with 3 generations inside of her. So you start to think, how many generations removed really are we from enslavement? But even if we're removed from it from a few, how many more are great-grandparents? So when we start to look at the trauma that we carry, there's so many pains and hurts that we can't even articulate. And we wonder why we do what we do, or why we act the way we act, or why we have the pains that we have. A lot of that is because it's from trauma that we can't even identify. And if you can't identify, how can you start to heal it? So the one thing, what I try to tell us is we have to have grace with ourselves. Sometimes we do things to disappoint ourselves. And we're like, why am I doing this? It's almost like a self-sabotage in a way, or it's a self-berating, like we beat ourselves up. And I said, no. It's so much hurt that's been compounded in our body. And see, when we're feeling good, remember we
Yes.
talked about that breath, that's called a settled body. And when you have a settled body, you know, that's what Cube called it's a good day. Like we have a good day. But if you look at Cube too, it'd be like, man, it wasn't always a good day in the hood. So when you don't have a settled body, guess what? When you have a settled body that meets an unsettled body, that unsettled body is going to win because it takes your energy. See, if you're in the church, you say, oh, I don't like his spirit. You know, you out in the world, you say, oh, they vibrations is off the frequency. Something ain't right. But sometimes it's some things that just happened before. And it's some things that we can't even wonder and imagine why it's triggered. We kind of have to give them a little secret about what we talked about offline. We were talking about the basketball coach from Michigan. And when that man grabbed him in the line, he don't know what he triggered in him. People's like, why is he so excited? He was trying to stop and talk to him. No, he told the man, don't touch me. Because we don't know what memory, what cellular DNA had came up. And so just as we can look at that thing, that example, I want us looking in our lives. What is it? It's a great, great book called My Grandmother's Hand. Oh, it talks about what it does for that hurt that's inside of us. But what I love about this, it starts to take us toward that healing because we have that resiliency also in our DNA. See, so many times we talk about trauma and we talk about the negative aspects of it. But when we start to look at what's also in our DNA, Brandon, in Milwaukee, we just had the reopening of the American Black Holocaust Museum. And when you go through it, you are upset, you go through a range of emotions, but the one thing that you leave out of there is so proud. You say, my people were strong, my people went through that. And that's the clue for all of us, that there can be healing because we see what our ancestors went through, we see what they survived, but also now we got to recognize this. We hear it all the time. They say, oh, they understood the assignment. And as Marika talked before, we got an assignment. We got to understand that we can't give up. We can't stop because it's hard. That doesn't mean it's not going to be a struggle. But what we have to recognize is that the pain we're dealing with is not just the pains that we have today, and those pains are great, but it's also a lot of things from an ancestral DNA that comes. And once we start to put this into the equation in our healing, in our therapy, we start to recognize, oh, wow, I can be free because now it's a freeing with being attached to that area. And so I don't want to take up too much time because I know we got so many other great panels, but what I want to just end in conclusion with that is saying is this: the hurts that we have go far beyond what we can articulate from a verbal standpoint, from a memory standpoint. But the beauty of it is there are different techniques, even with things that we can't articulate, that we can still heal within our souls.
Absolutely. Thank you for bringing us back, Doc, a little bit to that history, that we bring things with us, that we have the resiliency, right, within us, within our DNA. But also I want us all to remember cellular memory, right? The Body Keeps Score is another book that you all might be interested in. Also Grandma's Hand, because yes, that's it. That's it. Brain, mind, and body, the healing work. So I want us to be really mindful that yes, we have some historical things going on within, but we also have that resilience built in. I want to throw this next idea or concept to Marika, just to talk a little bit about, piggybacking off what Doc said about the historical context and what your thoughts are around that, but also what it feels like oftentimes to be the only Black face in the room.
Okay. Well, I would just echo everything that he pretty much just shared. And then he kind of briefly touched on like the PTSD piece. So I'll kind of speak to that a little bit in my experience. And so earlier on in my my career, I would typically be the only Black woman in the space and the youngest. And so I have experienced times where I may have had an idea, but it may not have been looked at or really heard by others. And so initially, I didn't really know how to speak up or, kind of just express my concerns about things in a way where, like Alderwoman Lewis shared, that I didn't come off as the angry Black woman. And so after about one or two times experiencing that type of situation, that's when I kind of went back to the book, the handbook. Okay, something in this handbook has to help me open up this dialogue, this conversation, so that I can get my point across. And so just going off of what I just shared earlier, that's where I grasp the idea of the core values. It's something that they're always trying to focus on. You see them on the walls in the hallways. They mention them in the meetings and things of that sort. And so I learned that identifying things such as collaboration, innovation, that was a big thing that I would lean more towards when I will present different concerns or different ideas that I wanted my colleagues or upper management to grasp a hold of or possibly implement into our programming. And by doing so, that really opened up doors of opportunity for where individuals will look to me for great ideas and things of that sort. You know, sometimes being a young person in your career field, individuals may feel as if you don't have the experience, you don't have the knowledge in order to bring a fresh idea or implement a new program. But again, I just went to the core values, I went to the mission and vision, and I found myself to be very successful by doing that.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. So tapping into some of the fundamental ideas that the organization or the company says they believe in and utilizing that to support you, to support your voice, to support your ideas, to support Black innovation, because it's everywhere and it's delicious, correct?
Absolutely.
Brandon, what are your ideas around your experience as a young Black man who just finished up at Hopkins and done some phenomenal things out there on the East Coast and all the things you're doing because you're of younger age. I'd like to say I'm middle aged. Don't worry about it, but I'm middle aged. And yeah, young, up and coming, educated, finding your voice, doing the good work for the good people, and then having those elders around you that can support you. Give us some insight and ideas on how you've had to navigate in some of these waters.
Yeah, I've had some challenges with this for sure. Even so, when I graduated, first of all, going through Hopkins, oftentimes I was the only Black student in the room, and been involved in all sorts of conversations, having to stand up for stuff, so that in and of itself was tough. And so once I graduated, I was working at Hopkins at the time, and then I left and went to work at a local health department here in Maryland. And I was so excited. First job passed, passed my master's program. And at the time, the first Black health officer was in charge of the county in that health department. First one they ever had in their history. And I went in, I applied for this job. I just wanted something different. And she got wind of my resume and was like, "Hey, I got something else for you. I got something, you know, a little different that I think you can do." And so I was like, "Okay, great." So I got there and it was absolutely rough. From day one, I was young. Like I said, I just got my master's degree, in my 20s, and um, just as um, Marika was saying, like just not even being able to get any ideas off, or like everything I put out was shot down and knocked down and discredited and all of these things. And it was tough. And I was like, hey, I got some experience here, like I just want to throw this off. And at a certain point, as Doc was saying, I completely lost my voice. I was like, I don't know if it's worth wasting any time trying to put something forward in this place. And then fast forward, while I was there, like there were a ton of racist events that took place with the health officer. So she, had I forget where she was from, but she was from one of the countries in Africa. Her last name was assumed to be difficult to pronounce, and so the people there, didn't bother. So they would make up joke names for her. They would talk about her behind her back and do all this stuff. And then what they did was they basically conspired to get her fired. They, created all these documents, and they said she wasn't adequate, didn't have enough vision. And this is all stuff that's documented. I'm not making any of this up. And, and they took it before city council, and they said that she was unfairly hiring Black people. I was one of the people that they referenced. Again, masters from Hopkins. Most people I work with didn't have a master. Some of them didn't have degrees, anything like that. Not that that's everything, but it was just like I was just initially unqualified just because she black, I'm black. I got here, I had to got, I've gotten there from some other mechanism. And so, long story short, they did end up getting her fired, and they let my contract run out at maybe 3 months after she got let go. And it was a tough time. I had my son at the time. He was two, maybe two at the time. So I was unemployed and things like that. And so it was really, really tough. And so, during that time, it was, all about just being positive. I think after, you know, experiencing something like that, I think, and we all have probably experienced racist things in our jobs and in our professions. And I think one of the things that I learned from that is, to understand that it's coming because of a threat. Like they feel threatened by our ideas, our innovation, just the idea that we could come with something that they couldn't bring, makes them feel threatened. So it's coming from something like that. So what I have must be powerful. What I have must be something of value. So I had to make sure that I kept the value of myself. Like as I was going to
Mhm.
find new jobs, as I was going to get myself out there, and again, my support system was amazing. I cannot thank, my family and friends enough. They were people that I was able to vent to talk to, and learn about their experiences and how they dealt with it. My key to anyone who deals with those is to just maintain your value. Your worth doesn't diminish because of what other people feel about you, or what Doc said, what other people put on you, right? Like that doesn't,
Yeah.
take away from that. And so I learned different ways to, to do that, and really to get myself out there. And, as I look back on it at this stage of my career, it was probably the best thing that happened to me, was getting out of that place, getting out of that environment, and doing some different things. So yeah, I think it's the value piece is really what I would emphasize.
Thank you. Thank you. That leads me to really think about kind of some of the things Doc, Marika, and Brandon shared about experiences. And Doc, I didn't hit you with that, but I know you're going to interject that when we get back around to you. But I wanted to make sure that we just go around real briefly. Alderwoman, Doc, Marika, and Brandon, can you share adjectives only? This is an assignment, okay? Adjectives only during some of those really major difficult times in work environments. I know Doc personally, so I know he shared some things with me years ago about what it feels like when sometimes you're the only Black face, you're younger, like Marika and Brandon mentioned, and nobody is trying to respect that voice. When you hear people having undertones and undermonings about other folks that you work with, and you don't want to sway with that, and you don't want to go, you don't want to ride with that, you ain't going against it, you ain't standing for it, but you know it's wrong. Like, what are some adjectives that made what you felt like? Give us a description of what you felt like in those environments at that time when work environments were hostile and they didn't appreciate our voices and our faces and our presence.
Yeah, I'll start. I have three: confused, sad, and then mad.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And I'll say deflated, helpless, and then I will throw out, I was going to say confused, but I'll throw out a little bit of, I want to say, I'll say this, imposter syndrome.
Thank you. Marika, any adjectives you have that kind of describe work environments that weren't healthy for you?
I would say frustrated, appalled, and disheartened.
Yeah, yeah. Brother Brandon, you on mute, bro.
It's definitely disappointing. It feels toxic. And I think, I think it was just challenging. I think challenging would be the other one.
Yeah, all that in the pot, right? Frustrated, angry, irritated, confused, lost. It's challenging. It feels toxic. And so, thinking about how to be our best selves, thinking about what Doc mentioned in terms of what we bring historically, thinking about our innovation and ways that we've always created a way when there is no way as a people. We just have that knack for that. Like, we know how to get out of things. We know how to be inventive, innovative. We know how to figure things out. But when you feel like your voice is not heard and when you're not valued, it can be really difficult. So I want to make sure we're really clear about those that have tuned in with us tonight. We understand your grief, your pain, your frustration, how challenging it can be, how toxic it feels, that you feel angry, that you feel sad, that you feel frustrated. All of those adjectives, we want to make sure that you know that we're here with you. That's why we wanted to have this discussion. That's why it was really important for Alderwoman Lewis to have this on the books right now and to get this done, because we want folks to understand that we all have been here and we know it's no easy feat. But tonight we plan on giving you information and ideas for how we can reduce some of those symptoms, some of those adjectives that we shared, and so that you can come back into the game tomorrow morning, heels kicking, clicking, ready to go, and making sure that your voice can be heard. Let's talk a little bit more about if there's any advice that you all are willing to share with folks. I think, Brandon, you've done a really good job of integrating some of that, but I'm going to pull you on last so you can bring in a little bit more. How do people continue to tap into work? I've been in situations where I'm like, I just ain't going no more. I'm gonna be honest. Y'all don't have to do that, but I'm gonna be honest and say I've been in a situation where I said I don't have to do this anymore because I felt like I was becoming ill. ILL.
You know what?
Marika, can you share any idea? I'm sorry. I want to let Miss Marika go first. Any ideas about or advice that you'd like to share with folks that are tuned in tonight in terms of what they should be doing or what they can be doing, coping, specific coping that you tapped into that helped you make it thus far?
Absolutely. I would say first and foremost, we're human, so feel the emotion. We all have emotions. Sometimes they feel good, sometimes they don't feel good, right? But it's okay. But not allowing yourself to sit with the emotion too long to where it overtakes you and you feel overwhelmed by that emotion. So going back to some of the adjectives that we just shared, if you are feeling frustrated or what have you, um, one of the most simple things that we forget to do is breathe. So focusing on our breathing, it definitely help to minimize that feeling of being frustrated or overwhelmed or whatever adjective you want to put in there. So focusing on your breathing, and allowing yourself to kind of like process like what got me to this point. That's something that you can just do within your own mind. There's a breathing technique that's it's called 4-4-4-4. And so what you do is you breathe in for a count of 4 and you breathe out for a count of 4. And I have my clients pause and repeat that. And they do that 4 times. And if they feel like, you know what, that kind of like just hit the surface, but I'm not there yet, then do it again. Sometimes 2 or 3 times of doing that could possibly help those emotions subside. I encourage my clients to maybe start out with a breathing technique in the morning just to kick their day off. When the afternoon comes around, let's do another reboot. Reboot yourself again to finish out your workday, and even as you conclude your night. And also allowing yourself some time kind of just like disengage. So that means like if you were to take a walk, if you take a little 5-10 minute break from your desk, take a walk, get some fresh air, just practical things that we can do on a day-to-day basis when we're feeling a little bit tense or it's like a toxic environment. Maybe if you're working from home, move your workspace from your living room to your kitchen, or somewhere else in your room. Just repositioning yourself in your space can definitely shift your mind as well. So those just a few things that I wanted to just throw out there. I'll let others add to that.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Alderwoman Lewis, any advice?
I would say I absolutely agree with what Marika just said. I moved I moved my desk from one side to the other, and that helped tremendously. It was insane. But one of the things that the reason why I said one of my words was imposter syndrome was because I felt like, because I wasn't being as successful as I thought, because I was allowing my voice to be diminished, and I was allowing myself to feel as if I wasn't good enough to be in the space and represent the people, because oftentimes I'm the only Black face in the space. And so I let myself be diminished and feel as though I didn't have any value to add. So when Brandon said having the value in yourself, that was huge for me. And once I really recognized that I had value to add in this space, my voice mattered in this space, then it was something that kind of empowered me to square my shoulders back a little bit and to be boldened, right? And that happened because my circle helped me to realize that I had value. And I, because I will shout out Deborah Moore, my chief of staff. She is amazing. She had to sit me down almost and like shake me out of it, out of the haze, and say, do you realize how amazing you are? So having your circle around you is critical for me. I always say, I'm gonna throw this out and then I'll throw it back to you. I always say, know your audience, know your balcony, and know your backstage. So those are the three. It's coming in the book, y'all. But the balcony are those, onlookers, those ones that's on Facebook, social media, that's always trolling, that always has something to say. You got to learn to brush that off, because people will say whatever they want to say behind a screen. They'll never come up to you and say it. Because I had some white men, when I first took office, call me that Black bee, and had never met me before ever. And when they got in my face, they said nothing. So those are those people. So you got to brush those folks off. Those people that are in the front, in the audience, down below, you got to give them a little bit of a look, but don't take too much of what they're saying. It's a grain of salt. You take it, and if it's good to add flavor to what you got going on, great. Otherwise, throw it over your shoulder. And it's those backstage people that will give you exactly what you need, and that will help you to push you over. And so that's what I had. I had my backstagers that was really rooting me on and telling me what I needed to know, whether it was good, bad, or indifferent, to be able to say, sis, like, look what you're doing, or you tripping, or whatever the case may be. So for me, that was very helpful to get me to a space where I could say, okay, you know what? I'm okay with voicing my opinion. I'm okay if I trip up on my words sometimes. I'm okay, because that was huge for me. If I didn't know the exact definition of that word in that moment, this real big $5 word that got me, I like diminished myself. I felt so small in that moment. And after having that conversation, I was like, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay for me not to know everything, and for me not to be an expert in every area, and for me to still have room to grow, but still showing up as my authentic self and being proud of it. So that was helpful for me.
Thank you. Thank you. It really sounds interesting, because it makes me think about when I have to remind myself about getting rid of that whole funky thing about perfectionism and having to be on and having to be right and having to be accurate. In the world, who's doing that? No one. And so teaching yourself that you matter, and what you say matters, and the questions that I have matters, and the doubt I have matters, but that I can be heard. So thank you for that, Alderwoman Lewis. Very, very, very helpful, you and Marika. Dr. Ramel Smith, any advice for those of us? And talk briefly a little bit about some of your experiences you've had very early in your career, and then give us some insight on advice or things you've had to do to adapt and learn to have your voice be heard.
And I think I can interweave these two in together. And you had said something where I tried to jump in real quick, and I wanted to know why I did, because you said ill. You was like, I felt ill. And when you asked for the words, I said I felt sad, confused, and mad. Because when you're younger, you sad, because you come with this energy. I'm just trying to be the best. I'm trying to bring information that's going to help everybody. Don't you want these changes too? And then when they don't meet it, it's like, okay, well, was it good enough, or is it just you don't want these changes? You want the status quo to remain. And so then you get sad because you're like, man, I thought I was in it. You know how you feel when you get that new job. Brandon talked about it. You say, oh, I've been blessed. I'm so grateful. I'm thankful. And then you realize, oh, this is the kind of same old, same old. But I ended with mad because Malcolm X had said one time before, he said two things. He said, when people get sad, nothing really changes. You know, they cry and they go. But when they get mad, that's when change comes. And he also said, you cannot heal in the same place that made you ill. So think about it, you know, especially in this age of coughing, somebody is coughing, you don't want to be in that room with them. You're like, hey, stay home. Don't bring that up in here. Because how can you get well in an environment that's unhealthy? And so you said, well, what do we need to do as far as this? Because I've been there where I had to say, I had to leave this job for my personal health. Because I was like, they stressing me. I said, life is too short. Because soon as you die, guess what? Your job is going to be up for the application. They're going to bring somebody else in and they're going to move on. And the people who you love in your backstage going to be the one who hurt. But to the Alderwoman and on that beautiful sermon, because I'm going to use them 3 points. You know what I'm going to do though?
Me too. I wrote them down. They in my notepad.
Think about integration. Think about integration. Before civil rights, we know that Jim Crow wasn't fair for us. But when we had our own theaters, guess what? We was catered to. We was loved. Martin Luther King said, you know what? We integrate these people, but it's a burning house because what are we integrating to a place where they don't want to serve me, where they don't want to treat me with respect? We still see that even to now today. And so, you talk about somebody who ain't afraid to say something. I didn't want any of the other ones to say this, but the reason why I have my own business is because you know what? I don't care what nobody says. If you don't like me, don't consult with me. Don't contract with me. But when I come, you know what I'm giving. I'm going to give you my heart. I'm going to give you my all. But I'm not playing with no silliness. As soon as you want it, I'm leaving. I'm done. Because you know why? When I was at Children's Hospital, now Children's Hospital is one of the best places to work. And when it comes to medical care, they are second to none. I love them. But when it came to the mental health department, it was whack. And I'm going to say, I can't say it any louder. St. A's, I love, they do some good things, but overall, it was horrible. When we try to make changes and institute these changes, I tell people, you got two choices. You can either stay or you can leave. Now, when you stay, you can do sort of like what Marika and Alderwoman Lewis said, you know what, I'm going to breathe, I'm going to walk around, I'm going to change my desk. You know, you try to do some of those things because if I'm going to stay, I'm going to try to work on it to make it better. I know the fight I'm in and I'm up for this fight, I'm going to do it. Or you stay and complain. Either of those were really choices for me. So I had to leave. So if you're going to leave, my mom always said, you got to pay the cost to be the boss. And so what I had to recognize is this, even if there were some things financially that I couldn't do when I first started, it gave me a different, what we kept saying, what's the word of the day? Breathe. It gave me a different breath because you know what? Maybe I wasn't making what I made in the beginning, but I had a different level of freedom. I had a different level of goodness about myself. And then guess how the Lord blesses? Because then you start to see your things multiply in different ways, and not just financially, but I'm talking about mentally, emotionally, all the things you can do. And being free is the greatest place. I think one of the worst things we have as Black people in this country is we have a desire to want to fit into America. We're like that stepchild. We love America. You hear Marvin Gaye, you hear Whitney Houston sing the national anthem, and you would swear that they wrote that song. And they give this love, but it's an unrequited love because the love you give is not returned back. And so what did we have to recreate? We had to create the Black national anthem. Why do we need a Black national anthem if America really is our country? Because what? We needed a safe space. That's why in companies, they know it ain't right. That's why they build affinity groups. I tell every company I deal with, if you got affinity groups, you got a messed up culture. Because if your people need to come together to a small space where they can come together and breathe and be themselves, it's not a healthy culture. And so when we start thinking about this, we got to start thinking about how do we want to be careful with what we buy, with what we own, because sometimes we got these bills and these responsibilities where we can't leave. And we say, well, I want to leave, but I got to stay here because I got this and I got this. So we got to be careful when we teach our young people about getting into debt too early, making sure that you always leave yourself a way out, that don't no job make you be a hostage and keep you enslaved to that place. So you say, well, what do? You got to get to the point where you say, you know what? I'm going to leave. Even if I'm going to leave a little bit on the table. Remember when Tina Turner left Ike? She was like, hey, he can have all that stuff. Just give me my name. Because he said, that's all I need. And sometimes you walk away with that, but that's enough to get you started to the next level. And so when we start thinking about what do we need to do, we got to be honest with ourselves and say, why am I in this place? Do I want to be the first Black person here where I'm the only Black? It used to be some pride in that because you thought, you know what, like Jackie Robinson, oh, I'll be the first, but then it'll be a legion more. But when you recognize, no, and I don't want to say a token, but you recognize, oh, I'm here kind of like a check mark, and like the Bucks, they doing HBCU tonight. I'm like, all right, come on. I said, now you're not giving away free tickets. You bringing people in. They got to pay for these tickets. And what you gonna do? A minstrel show at halftime with the step show? And it's like, is this really serious? Is it just for the night? Or you really gonna try to work with HBCUs, work with the Black students at Marquette, at Whitewater, at UWM, and do something? Or is this just for capitalism? And so oftentimes we're so happy to get those crumbs because what we want to be welcome, we want to be excited, we want to be there. That sometimes we prostitute ourselves and sell ourselves short. So what I say is we cannot be complicit in our own downfall. And what we have to do is recognize, see, Martin Luther King talked about materialism and consumption. And if we can get out of that state and get back into a socialism of our, let me just talk about my basic needs, we'll understand we have so much more freedom on an employment tip, because some of the things that we think we absolutely need, we recognize those are some of the hindrances that bring us down. So to your point, what do? Either you stay, and if you stay, you say, well, what can I do to make it better, understanding that fight? But you can't stay and do nothing because that is definite death, emotional death that leads to physical death. And if you say, I can't do either, then you got to leave. And there's enough brilliance inside of you that can birth an ideal, a job, a career, and employment opportunities for other people to make that utopian that we want. Make it good for me and those in that circle.
Amen and amen. Amen. If you stay, speak up. Do you. Let your voice be heard. But otherwise, if it's unhealthy, if it's making you ill, listen to the great doctor. Okay?
No, can I say
Brandon.
Because
please do.
I just want, and this is real quick. I look at Alderman Lewis and I think about Brandon being in Maryland, and then I think of Kevin Hunt, the mayor, who just recently committed suicide. Here it is. You have this young mayor on top of the world, just elected, family, all of these different things. But because of the pressures and things unbeknownst to us, we don't know all of the other things going on, but we know what high pressure jobs can do sometimes. So I'm telling everybody to really reevaluate, why do I do what I do? And is this really worth it? And if you can do that, you sometimes understand that the answer is a lot easier than you think, and that sometimes taking that leap of faith, that step of faith, will put you into a better position that you could even imagine.
Absolutely.
Because
something? We are mind, body, and soul, one being connected, mind, body, and soul. There's no way that we can have mental anguish and pain and it not affect us physically, and vice versa. There's no way that Black professionals can be in environments where we feel ill and we have mental anguish and it not affect other factors in our life. Marika?
Yes, I just wanted to touch on what Doc just stated. So I was working my private practice. I've had my private practice for almost 4 years. August will be 4 years. And I was working part-time up until October of last year. And this is the reason why I left my job. It's because I started to feel ill in my body. And it was just became overwhelming. And you're talking about someone who's been in the field over 10 years now. And with all the knowledge and experience and education, all that, yes, I definitely felt overwhelmed by my job. Yes, I was stressed out by my job. And, I literally came to the place where I said, you know what, 2020, I said, I'm about to position myself over the several months so that I can leave this job comfortably. So I left October 15th, and hey, going on what is that? 5 months in a couple weeks, and the place liberty and freedom. I feel you touched on it, Doc. Like I'm living that right now, and so I just wanted to share my own personal testimony.
Yes, thank you, because I heard you say, sister, position yourself. Position yourself. Brother Brandon, advice.
How am I supposed to follow all of those nuggets?
It's so good in this space right now. I ain't letting y'all go. It's so good right here.
Man, they say in church, y'all talking good.
Y'all talking good.
I think, I mean, so much has already been said, and I 100% agree with everything that's been said by Alderwoman Doc and Marika. I think honestly, the only thing I would add to that is just remembering to rest. I think so often we're in these spaces, and Doc had mentioned like capitalism and all these other things. Like, we're built to continue to move and be productive, and to constantly kind of like push ourselves. One, because we've been taught growing up, you got to be 2 times as good, 2 times as smart, 2 times as influential. And you get in these spaces and you feel like, I got to show and prove, show and prove, show and prove, and understanding that we can't be helpful to anybody if we're burnt out. So many of us in these spaces, we get burnt out because we like, I gotta be the one to show up. I can't not show up. I can't take a day off. I can't,
Great.
not be there. And we get to this point where by the end of it, we're not good to anyone. And at a certain point, we just burn out. And we can't speak up as much, and we're tired. And to be quite honest with you, a lot of systems are in place, are designed to wear us out. We put so many hurdles in front of us over and over again that we hop over another one. By the time you get to the fifth, sixth one, you just trip and lay down. But if we will take the break in between them, and understanding too that we're not alone in this space, I think that's one of the things that I had to learn in this, is understanding that there's other people with us that are a part of this, and willing to help. Like, even just meeting you all, like, it's been such a blessing to meet, you all. You all know when I met you, and kind of what happened, where I had a mentee die by suicide, like right after we got off of one of our other events. But knowing there are other people in this space that's doing the work, that's putting in the energy, and you're not by yourself, that you can tap into and say, I'm going through this, and and stuff like that. Like, having those people in your corner and having that time to rest and recharge and regroup. And it also gives you the time and the empowerment to do what Marika said, which is make a plan. If this ain't the space, and I rest and give my mind a little bit of time to think, I can come up with my exit. My exit strategy is done. My business plan is done. I can take time to do those things. And so, you know, that's something, even as I'm still learning how to do the rest thing completely, I think that is one of the things that, I'm learning and understanding, that if we don't do that and rest and get time to recharge, the system will do what it's designed to do, which is to burn us out.
That's
Yeah,
how you
thank
follow
you.
them
Thank
gems. That's how you follow them gems.
you. I'm telling you, I like you
Listen, it's
here.
hard.
I like you here. I'm keeping y'all. I just want to do a quick recap just briefly on advice. So Marika had shared with us a little earlier to make sure that we just don't sit in the emotion, which I thought was delicious, because I found myself dangerously sitting in them. And it's dangerous. I said it's dangerous. It's dangerous to sit in those emotions without figuring out how to make them move through the body. Don't allow them just to sit in your chest or in your throat or in your abdomen or in your belly or in your spirit or in your soul. Get rid of them. Share them with the support groups you have that Brandon mentioned. Get you some rest, recharge, regroup. Marika also talked to us about focused breathing techniques, right? Understanding that during that focused time, you can take some time to position yourself, make a plan, get an exit strategy, or figure out how you're going to do this thing so you're not transferring that work stress over to that financial stress or over to that new positioning stress, because I'm telling you, that thing can move with you. And sometimes you look back and it's still following you, right? So we're talking about how to shake that thing off. We heard Alderwoman Lewis talk a lot about making sure we understand the audience, the balcony, and the stage. And I ain't gonna steal it because it's in her book, but I will be repeating
I was
that
like, when
quite a
that book
bit.
dropping? What's the release date? We need that book.
What is the release date so you can help us further beyond this conversation, Alderwoman Lewis?
Listen, it's coming June 22.
Yes,
It's coming.
yes. We're waiting for you. We're waiting for you. And then we definitely heard Doc say in simplest form, and then he broke it down later. But in simplest form, it was leave. Why be in an environment that's harming to you? That when you pull up in the parking lot, you automatically have a headache, a migraine, your stomach is running, it's hurting, your back is aching, your legs are sore, you can't say good morning to nobody. You can't go to the handbook, Miss Marika, and figure out what the mission statement of the agency is, because they not They're not tapping into it when it comes to you or us. It's not some people on the call, some people listening in have done all of that, right? So sometimes an exit is what's needed. And so having that plan of action is phenomenal. I want to talk a little bit about giving yourself permission as Black individuals in this country to take some time to rest and recharge. And the reason that I want to talk about it is because it's been something that's been laid before us by Brother Brandon, but also I know so many people that battle with the idea or the right or the privilege to rest. Because when do we see, Doc? When do we see our elders rest? When do we see it? And now we're trying to implement it through, like you said, Alderwoman Lewis, sometimes pampering ourselves or sometimes, getting a massage and our nails done. But is that rest? And for some, it could be. But there's been times when I needed rest and I just felt that I didn't have the opportunity to take it. Nobody told me that. That was me. So let's talk a little bit about why it's important to give ourselves permission to take a break. Miss Marika.
One of the things I often share with individuals is self-care is a priority, not a luxury. And I think oftentimes we treat it as a luxury, such as, like you were sharing, pampering ourselves, which is fine, traveling, all that. I love all of that. But a day-to-day things that we can just do. When I think about self-care or resting, it's where um you can relax in a place where you're not working, where you're not obligated to be quote unquote on. You don't have a responsibility in that moment, but just to yourself. And saying, like you said, giving yourself permission and saying it's okay. Okay, there may be some individuals that's listening in right now. They have different hats when they go home. Totally understandable. One of the things I often share with my clients is understanding and knowing and first identifying your capacity. Because when you can identify your capacity, then you can set your expectations. If we don't set our own expectations, others will impose their expectations on us. And that's where frustration comes in.
Yes.
And so with
Yes.
that, first
Yes.
identifying capacity. Then you can understand and identify your expectations. Set them for yourself and communicate them with those who are within your circle. And so with that, there's an understanding. And so if you say, so I'm a mom. When my daughter was younger, I had set time where I would feed her, spend time with her, play with her, read with her, all of that. And she knew for an hour or so, I will be in the same space as her, but I would give her time to do what she was doing, and I would do what I wanted to do, whatever that may be, reading the Bible, resting, whatever that may have been for me that I consider as rest or self-care. And she understood that. So teaching her at a young age, even now, she knows, like when I say, hey, I just need a little bit of time, she know what that means for me. And she doesn't pull on me in that way because I communicated that to her earlier on. And it's been our norm, I would say. So sometimes it may mean reestablishing what that looks like in the household when you are at home. So that's what I would just share.
Thank you. And thank you. And you brought up a great point, Marika, when you talked about your baby girl and what you do in the home is that it's our responsibility as Black professionals, Black leaders, Black people to teach our youth what rest looks like. Because we don't have no problem teaching them about work. Clearly. Again, information and permission to rest, Brother Brandon.
Yeah, I think Marika really put it out really plainly. Like it's those boundaries, right? It's those boundaries and making sure that people around us know what they are. I think that another piece of it that's a challenge, and being very honest is definitely what the challenge for me still is getting past the guilt of rest. Just like you said, our people, our aunts, like they, were going doing stuff. Our parents, like we don't gotta look far. Our parents, grandparents were doing, so many things and juggling, so many overt forms of racism and all sorts of things that they, dealt with as they were carving a path for us. And so like there's this guilt also of like, and our culture, definitely emphasizes it, like this grind culture of like, If you're not doing something, you ain't got 3 LLCs, you're not writing a book like Alderwoman, and coming up with all these private practices like the other panelists, like that you're not doing enough. And just understanding that you won't be able to do anything if you don't give yourself the space and the permission to do it. And I find one of the things that helps me is to plan it in. So like have specific times where you're like, at this point, if you can plan all the work stuff out, you can also plan, I'm tapping in at this time, or like as soon as the kids go to sleep, I'm doing this, and just finding what works for you. Like rest looks like to me. And first of all, I'm glad my wife hasn't jumped in, because she gets on me about not resting enough. So I know she's somewhere listening in on this. But finding, like, one of my things is just watching the same shows that I like to watch, and same episodes. Sometimes like, you watching that again, it's a safe space, for me. So figuring out what those are and then building those in, and trying not to allow the guilt in the culture, the grind culture that we're a part of, to make you feel like if you're not doing something, then you don't have value.
If you're not doing something, then you don't have value. So you said build them in. That means add them to your calendar, get used to having them, put that rest on repeat, figuring out how to sit in that. Even if you feel that guilt, don't move, rest. Thank you. I'm not going to have you all talk about rest. I want to, Alderwoman Lewis and then Doc, to kind of address some of the questions that some of our viewers have going on right now. And one very important and interesting question from one of the viewers is, how do we balance our trauma experiences, our family's trauma experiences, all while trying to get healthy mentally while we're still being successful? So this person is trying to be successful, is trying to be healthy mentally, is trying to deal with their own traumatic experiences and handle that, and the traumatic experiences of their family and or possibly their community. And for me, that question sounds very familiar. It sounds very familiar for some of us that have loved ones that have experienced trauma, which we all do. And some of us have experienced trauma. Most of us probably have to some degree. How do you find your balance between all of that as Black professionals?
Yeah, we call that
Doc?
the black tax. The black tax.
Ah, preach.
And so when we think about this black tax, it's a beautiful burden. If you're in a higher income bracket and you're getting taxed, but the beauty is that means you're making a lot of money. And so sometimes you have a different responsibility with other people who are around you who don't have that. And in the Bible, it says it's better to give than to receive. So when you have that extra, it is a blessing. But then the part comes when that blessing becomes more stressful. And these are the lessons that we have to learn. Sometimes we don't know how to say no. Sometimes we don't know how to help people in other ways. Sometimes we help and that help becomes enabling. And then Brandon used a good word, it's a guilt. Because you say, now if I don't help you in this manner, now, I think I'm all that, or now you done did this, and now you done got up here. And so that's part of the black tax. So like I said, as much as it can be beautiful, it can also be taxing. And the thing is, people always think you got more than what you got. So they really don't know, what's going on, but they thinking this other there. So you struggling with other different things in different areas in which they can't even know. But because you have to put on that strong face, you're always on goal. What they see is that power is there. And so this goes back to what we said in the beginning. We have to be vulnerable and we have to be honest with ourselves. If we can't be honest and real with ourselves, there's no way we're going to heal. Because if you solve a problem that's not really a problem, then you're going to always have the real problem that's still there, that's been unaddressed. So you say, well, what do? What you do is you do one day at a time. And then what you have to start to recognize is this. What I've learned in my life is this. There's never anybody who I will cut out of my life. I have a thing with loyalty. But also I understand and recognize is certain places and spaces where only people can come into my life. Because I can't allow that kind of energy to come into me because I have other responsibilities. And Marika hit it on the head. She said her daughter understands. And what I started to recognize is this: working in the prison, you recognize people know who love her, because you say, who visited me? Who put money on my books? And you really don't know until you get to that point. But Marika said, my daughter loves me. And even though she might need mama, she understands mama needs this or what. She's beautiful enough and she's mature enough to say, I'm gonna give mama this space. So when mama do come to me, she's full. And so what I started to recognize is this: to give myself mental spaces. who loves me and who cares about me unconditionally, who's caring about me more than I'll care about myself sometimes. And when I see that, those are the people who I give that energy to. Marika talked about, you know, a luxury and what's a luxury or what's a priority, or what's the old saying, never make anybody a priority. Who, what, to you, you're just what, if I'm not a priority to you, then you can't be a priority to me. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but what I do got to do is I got to recognize who I'm responsible for and who's giving me that energy. And it sounds hard in a sense, but it's really not, because what it's saying, I'm teaching you how to treat me. My mama said, people gonna treat you the way you let them. So if you let them do that, then sometimes we invite that. And so I got to say, no, I don't want that. And if that's what you want to bring, then you're not invited. But when you're ready to come, what they say, don't come till you come correct, because when you come correct, you can come. But if you come and, you know, on that black, you got to stay. And so what I say is, for the caller, for the person who put in the question, is understand that black tax. Understand sometimes we make mistakes, we learn the hard way. When you lose that lesson, when you lose, don't lose the lesson. Turn that lesson into a blessing and say, okay, I can read you now. I understand where we at. This is where we at. Okay, so this is how I got to move. And once I know how I got to move, you done gave me the game plan, and I can move that way with a freedom and with a smile, no animosity, because that animosity creates a hate in us. That's a different way. I release that because I know the blessing is coming on the other side. And once I teach you how to treat me, then that creates a better situation for us all, because then intuitively we teach them how to then set the parameters and boundaries for other people.
Absolutely. You just laid it down, how we can find balance and all of that for that viewer, for that caller, for whoever is tuned in to that. That's how you do it. Just what Doc said. I'm not even going to go into nothing else. We have time for maybe one last question. We had a viewer say, when we are successful, we often have to carry our family. Kind of, this piggybacks off that question, though, Doc, Brandon, and Marika, and Alderwoman Lewis. When we are successful, we often have to carry our family financially, emotionally, and sometimes physically. How do we navigate that? So we're Black professionals, we're dealing with the stressors of home. We feel like we're successful in our Black professionalism. We often have to carry our family financially, emotionally, and sometimes physically. How do we navigate that? And that one's a little broad because there's different routes to navigation. It's not one road. It ain't gonna be one answer. Brother Brandon.
Yeah, I would say a couple of things. One, I think it's important for us, if, you know, in any way we can find a way to do it, like just definitely making sure that we have a mental health therapist, counselor, the docs and the Marikas of the world, who I call superheroes, and the work that they do, just to be able to unload, you know, some of that. And if you can, I know a lot of our people are waitlisted right now, but if you can, and you find one that looks like you know, even better, because there are certain things. My therapist is a Black woman. I'm going to talk to her tomorrow. There are so many times when I'm talking with her, I can get to a certain point and I'm like, you know how that feels, like, you know what that, you know, and she can be like, yeah, and we can talk through those things and navigate those. So I think that is important too, because, you know, we can find other ways to share the weight, right? And it doesn't have to be family, doesn't have to be friends. We can get a mental health counselor or therapist that can definitely help us with that. You know, I think the other thing really goes into what Dr. Marika said. It's those boundaries, you know, right? And having people understand that, like Marika said, understanding where our boundaries are. And what Doc said, people assume you have more than what you have, right? If you're doing it in those spaces. So you're like, this is what I can do for the family. It doesn't mean that I have to go to zero to still be a part of the family, to still help, to still encourage, to still, you know, to still support. So understanding what those are and figuring out, you know, sometimes it does take those time to sit down with family and be like, how can we do this more together? This is what I can do. This is what I'm able to do. How can we pull in, you know, you don't necessarily have to have all the financial resources to impart wisdom and strength into people to help someone, you know, with their homework or to help guide family. Like figuring out and organizing those things can also be to be helpful. But I think having a place to unload some of that, setting those boundaries as much as possible, which can be tough with family. It can definitely be tough with family, but figuring out what really works for you and your immediate family and what you can give. A lot of times people are even guilted into doing so much again that even you get burnt out by family. So, figuring out where to put those things and having a support like a mental health counselor, I think really to help unload some of those things and even able to talk through. Sometimes you need some outside voice that's not a family member that doesn't have a stake in what's going on and be able to tell you, hey, this is how I'm seeing it, from my angle.
Yeah, thank you. I love what you said specifically about unloading on a mental health professional. That's what we're here for. That's what we get paid to do. That's what we do. And we can help you navigate those waters. I applaud you, Brother Brandon, on having a partner and a female therapist that you can say, hey, you get this, you know this. Nothing feels better than tapping into somebody who gets you, who understands you, who understands what you're going through and your plight in life. They've been there, they're doing it with you. They can hold your hand and navigate these waters with you. We want to encourage everyone that's tuned in tonight to seek mental health professionals if and when needed. It doesn't make you weak. It doesn't make you silly or sickly or anything. It makes you well. And that's what tonight's conversation is about, being well, mental recalibration, making sure that your mental is in place so that you can continue to do the things that bring you joy. Hopefully, you're in careers and jobs and positions that make you happy, that make you feel purposeful, that meet your purpose, that align with what your goals and agendas are for your future. If not, you might want to start thinking about what that looks like for you. It's always suggested to lean into supports, to do those deep breathing exercises, and to not sit in emotions, but to find those support systems, to understand that there are exit strategies and exit plans, and that you can design it the way Alderwoman Lewis has in her mind. I know she visualizes, right? The audience, the balcony, and the stage, giving her full support and full view of what's going on at all times. Her voice matters. Your voice matters. And we want you here and we want you healthy. We want to thank you for being here with us tonight. I don't want to close out without giving each panelist an opportunity to leave us with some closing remarks. So I will end with you, Alderwoman Lewis. Marika, can we start with you?
Absolutely. I would say if you're not at the place where you find yourself seeing a therapist, just taking note of those different practical things that you can do at home. And someone kind of just asked the question regarding carrying their family emotionally. I would just encourage them to relieve themselves of that burden of carrying someone else's emotion. And being in a place where you know that individuals, they are responsible for their own emotions, not you. And I would also encourage individuals to affirm themselves on a daily basis as well.
Yes, thank you. Affirmation every day. Thank you. Thank you. Brother Brandon, back to you. Any last final thoughts do you want to share with those tuning in?
Yeah, it's just that you're loved, you're supported, and that you're needed. Everybody has a role in these spaces, whether it's, it feels grand or feels small. Just in some places, just people seeing you in position can really change someone's trajectory and make them feel valued and that they can keep pushing. So definitely continue to, reach out and connect with any supports that you need. Find your tribe, whether it's in your organization or outside. Find your tribe that you can talk to, that you can vent to. And, if you need, those mental health supports, definitely do that. Just remember to rest and take care of yourself because we need you now more than ever. So yeah, just, love and support to everyone who's out there watching tonight.
Thank you. Doc?
Yeah, I'll try to keep it real quick. We talk about a lot of individual healing. And I think what we also have to recognize that we have collective healing that we can do. And when we start talking about a community healing, how do we do this healing together? Because if I get work, but my family don't, well, then they're still stuck in that same place I was. But if we can do this simultaneously, and that's how we take from that individual stress and taking on other people's stress and saying, this is ours collectively together and we're working on it. So what we have to start to do is to start looking at more community healing, more collective healing practices. And that's something I think we'll talk about in weeks coming in the come.
Thank you, Doc. And then Alderwoman Lewis.
Thank you. I would just say I wanted to remind folks that it's okay to not be okay and to say something about it. Oftentimes, especially within our culture, it's taboo. You can't say anything. It's viewed as weak. It's viewed as something that we don't do, and especially if you are saved and Black. Talking to a therapist does not go together. But I'm here to tell you that, and I'm gonna put on my pastoral hat, is the thing that we need. We need Jesus and therapy. That's going to set you free and keep you free. So the narrative that you can't do that, especially in the church space, especially in the Black space, hogwash. We are dispelling that myth right now, especially going through, like Doc said, taking us all the way back and how we have carried that trauma, that PTSS, that post-traumatic slave syndrome. Dr. Joy DeGruy, oh my God, if you haven't read it, you've got to read it. But it's how we're carrying that thing. And then if you add the Christianity part to it, you're saved and you're having this mindset that I'm just gonna pray it away. No, because we got to renew our minds daily. And you have to do that by making a conscious decision, a conscious choice. And that's something that I had to really come to terms with and be okay with. And now I say loud and proud, Jesus and therapy keep me free.
Yeah.
So that I can be healthy and mentally and physically, emotionally healthy for my family, myself, my community, and so that we can continue to strive on from there. So thank you.
Yes, yes. Thank you all. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you all. And this is for those that have decided to tune in, that have tapped into our live stream, that have asked questions, and those of you that want more. Make sure that you, if you are a participant, again, there's a handout that was connected to your login or to you linking into this link. We want you to utilize that resource handout for anything you might need in terms of mental well-being for you as a Black professional. And of course, we have the 1-800 number for NAMI, National Alliance for Mental Illness, as well as blackmentalwellness.com. There are many other sites. I'm gonna give Brandon an opportunity to shoot us out his YouTube page again, please.
The Black Mental Wellness Lounge. I have a video on imposter syndrome and resting also. So go quick plug. So go
Thank you.
check that out.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And Dr. Kwaku, you are doing some Black history things. I know this is coming up on the last of them probably for the month, but can you talk briefly about what you've been able to gift us with this month?
Yeah, just really what we've been talking about today. How do we go back to our cellular memory? How do we heal? How do we look up on the past, the great things that was done? But what's the charge? As Sister Pastor said, how do we renew our minds daily and think about what's our mission going forward? But within that mission, understanding what is our capability. So I'm on Unspeakable Truth TV. You can find it on YouTube or on Facebook. That's what we do. We're going to keep giving words to the people.
Thank you. And Miss Marika, can you also share with us your private practice? And then just let us know where you at. Can we find you? Can people, if they're looking for a mental health professional, can we tap in? Can we find you?
Yes, my agency name is Rogers Counseling and Consulting Firm. And unfortunately, right now, I am fully booked with my clientele, but I do monthly healing gatherings in the community. It's free of charge. I'm looking to do the next one March 19th, and we talk about trauma from various different angles because we know trauma is a very big topic. So we kind of break it down and we dive in. We have real lived experiences discussed. We have panelists from the community who share their testimonies, and then we have clinicians who speak from a clinical perspective. So it's just an open dialogue for the
Thank
community.
you. And how can people tap into that, Miss Marika?
I share the event on social media, so either on my Facebook page, which is just my name, Marika Rogers, or on my Instagram page, as well as my website, marikarogers.com.
Thank you so much. Thank you all, panelists, and thank you for those that tuned in tonight. We pray that you all continue on your fight, but that you also incorporate well-being starting tonight, right now.
And stay tuned. We have a series coming up. So this is not the end of the conversation. So hold on. We got some stuff coming for you in the month of March. Thank you all so much for tonight. Appreciate y'all.